All set? Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Town of Pownell Select Board Meeting, November 9th, 2023 at 6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Board member roll call.
Angie Rowling,
Bob Jarvis.
Jamie Percy.
Mike Gardner. I'd like everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Approval of the agenda, public comment, approval of minutes, warrants, correspondence, excess weight permits, updates from town officials, the new health officer, BCRC presentation on citing criteria plan for community and economic development, community use of town office meeting space continued, Conservation Commission continued discussion of letters of interest, public comment, executive for personnel, and adjourn.
So moved.
second.
Any discussion, changes, additions?
I'm thinking, just on the Conservation Commission, given some of the feedback, it's probably good not to do the letters of interest, but if we want to talk about the commission itself, that would be my proposal.
Yeah, we can make that decision, I guess, when we get there, Bob, unless someone else has anything.
Right?
Anything else? All those in favor?
Angie, I.
Bob, I.
Jamie, I.
Mike, aye. Thank you. Public comment, we have any public comment? Oops, we lost Hannah for a minute.
She'll be right back. She's getting warrant amounts, I think. Public comments, so.
I knew where she went, sorry, I went too fast for
Get
you.
back over there, just let us know if there's.
That's what I was looking for. No one
We
has
did
any?
have, now we did have a letter that a citizen, Donna Lozon, was hoping to make public comment and said she couldn't make it, so she sent her public comment in. Should that be read?
What's the board's pleasure? And we didn't get it until later, I think it was late this afternoon, right? And I don't think the whole board has had,
I haven't seen it.
I skimmed it, haven't read it. So I don't know the content of it, Bob, because of the time.
But we never know the content of public comment.
Well,
before
that's
it
true.
happens.
That's true, but usually the person that, I don't know, the letter that comes in like that, I really don't know what to do with that, to be honest with you.
Well, we don't have correspondence on the agenda, do we? Or do we?
Yes. Hmm?
Yes, we do.
So maybe we can read it during correspondence. And maybe that's where it belongs.
Okay. No public comment, Hannah? Okay. Approval of minutes. October 26th, 2023 Select Board Meeting.
So moved.
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Angie, I.
Bob, I.
Jamie, I.
Mike, aye. Minutes of November 2nd, special Select Board Meeting.
Second.
Any changes, corrections? All those in favor?
Angie, I.
I'm sorry, I have to ask. Tara, was I in that one?
Which one? I'm sorry, the special?
November 2nd?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay, yeah. Bob, I.
Jamie, I.
Mike, aye. Accounts payable, November 3rd, $192,166.68.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, corrections, additions? All those in favor?
Angie, I.
Bob, I.
Jamie, I.
Mike, aye. Accounts payable, November 10th for $38,352.04.
Second.
Any corrections, questions? All those in favor?
Angie, I.
Bob, I. Sorry.
Jamie, I.
Mike, aye. Payroll November 3rd, 2023 for $11,109.59.
So move.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor?
Angie, I.
Bob, I.
Jamie, I.
Mike, aye. Payroll November 10th, $10,225.96.
So move.
Second.
Any corrections, questions? Sorry. All those in favor?
Angie, I.
Bob, I.
Jamie, I.
Mike, aye.
No, I'll abstain. You're in that one.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna abstain from that, you're right. Thank you, Angie.
You're welcome.
I forgot that, and I knew that too. Sorry.
That's okay.
So will you correct that, Hannah, as me, as an abstention on that payroll, please? Thank you. Correspondence, do we have that in front of us?
I do have it printed. Does someone else want to help me read?
I'll read it.
Because I have some other
I just,
stuff.
I don't have it printed in front of me. Correspondence, from Donna Lozon. I hope to read this in person, but I'm unable to be there in time for the meeting. I hope the board received the email from the sheriff from 11/7, as he said he was forwarding for transparency regarding speeding on Route 7. If not, please advise, and I'm happy to send it all to you. I watched the October 26th meeting several times to understand the purpose of the Conservation Commission. However, in the meeting, in my opinion, it was not clearly defined. Based on your discussion at that meeting, it could be construed as being formed only for the purpose of doing land management on the newly acquired forest land. Later on Facebook, there was a statute regarding conservation commissions posted. I'm wondering now that you've had 2 weeks, if you could explain more plainly to the public how you, the elected members of the board, envision the purpose, responsibilities, and boundaries of this appointed commission. It was stated at this meeting in the advertisements there was apparently a previous Pownell Conservation Commission now being revamped. Are there any, quote unquote, are there any documents or materials available to the public about what the previous Pownell Commission did, projects they worked on, who served, and why it may have disbanded? Are there meeting minutes stored somewhere? Do you know any former members who could give historical knowledge about this commission in town that you can share? I looked online to search for myself, but the document archives on the town website are completely empty as of this email. There are no available documents as of 11/9/23, not even select board minutes. I would appreciate that information. And perhaps the few people that expressed interest in this commission when at the caucus meeting know what the commission is for, but it wasn't fully presented in the public meeting of the town. As was stated on October 26th, it is hard to get people involved, and that's especially true for people hearing about it for the first time or later in the news and not fully understanding what their board has created, what people would be doing if they asked for an appointment. At the October 26th meeting in the banner, it was stated that one reason Powell needs a conservation commission is because the town needs expertise to help with the forest management, and expertise is in quotations as well, sorry. To help with the forest management plan. I'm hoping you can clarify that statement. The call for applicants on the website and Facebook doesn't state any specific requirements for expertise or experience. So is this commission being formed to garner expertise in executing forest management plans? Or can anyone be considered even if they don't have a master's in something like forestry or environmental studies? Has anyone had conversations or even looked into the services and expertise provided by agencies like ANR, National Forest, and the Bennington County Conservation District? How would this commission differ from the Bennington County Conservation District, which I believe is always on the town ballot? Since the conversation about the commission on October 26th centered around the newly acquired land, it may leave people and potential applicants to believe the commission would only focus on that parcel. However, in the statutes posted, it states that the commission is much more expansive than that and has a greater reach. I think it's important for citizens and prospective members to know that this commission would be involved with all town land and future land acquired, not just one particular parcel and one particular project. Please know that I'm not asking these questions to criticize anyone, but in order to understand and offer feedback to my elected officials on what was portrayed at the public meeting, which is my right. From my perspective and from others in town, this was done rather hastily, warned as an initial discussion and voted on only minutes later without much information or explanation and without affording citizens a chance to formulate questions. If town leaders and staff want people to join a board, commission, or committee, they say they do, it's imperative that due diligence is done. Furthermore, it seems there were already letters of interest before this was even discussed at a public meeting or advertised to the general public. That gives the appearance of leaving out people who didn't attend a certain political event, but also the appearance that the vote was a done deal before it ever happened. In my time in Pownell, I've never seen such a quickly created arm of town government, and I'm curious if there is a reason, such as a grant or state mandate. I'm not sure I or anyone else would have any objection to the Conservation Commission. I just believe the town needs to always take the time to thoroughly and carefully explain to taxpayers and potential appointees what a new town committee would do, give people an opportunity to weigh in. It may be a great thing for Pownell. I'm just speaking as a citizen who watched the meeting and saw an entire commission come about seemingly little regard to the majority of the citizens. Pownell is more than one person or three people or five people. It's every resident. As I am unable to attend, if you can't respond to your next meeting to any of this, I'm submitting these questions for an anticipated response at a future meeting. The benefit being greater transparency and the possibility of garnering more interest in serving. Thank you for your time, Donna Lozon.
And we'll answer some other questions when we talk about Conservation Commission.
And that's fine. We can, if some of the answers come up when we talk about it tonight, that's totally fine. But in light of all public comment, whether it's read or submitted in an email or a letter, I think we need to weigh out before we answer any of the questions on that and have a little bit of time to, you know, digest it and absorb it and then come up with some answers as she clearly pointed out, rather than hastily answering a question.
Okay, can you just address the archive page so people know how to access them in the meantime?
Yeah, so there has been a problem with our archive. I was gonna provide this in updates, but I'll just say it now. Hannah and I are working really hard to get that fixed, but in the meantime, our records, our minutes are always available here. And you can always reach out to us via email and request a copy. We'll always forward them to you.
Megan, would you just announce yourself and do you have more public comment?
Yes, I'm confused because it was my understanding that this was a long-standing, older, you're calling it a.
It's a commission.
Commission.
It is a commission.
That was in place years back.
That's true. That's true. And I don't want to get in, I'm not going to get into a debate on this, but you're absolutely correct on this being a commission that has been in place for probably a really long time, because I can remember it.
It's good to know that there is information on it. And
Potentially.
Yeah, and I was gonna address this too. I haven't had time to research the previous commission or what they did. But I'm sure that there are plenty of, documents that we can research in the safe and.
We'll probably have to.
If previous members have information they'd like to share, I'd be more than willing to.
Right.
We'll probably have to go back several years. Having been on the board for 6 years, I don't remember there ever being a Conservation Commission meeting.
I'm thinking it was quite a few years ago.
Is there any more correspondence, Sarah?
No, that was.
Okay, perfect. Any excess weight permits?
No.
Updates from town officials?
I have a couple of those. Figure out where I put them. So Tom didn't have an update because we had just met with him recently, so he didn't have anything to add to that. And Joel, he also gave an update pretty recently, but he said the road crew has been working on getting the trucks ready for inspection, some tree cutting and ditching as of recently. And my update was the website. And Darcy has some pretty detailed updates too. They successfully completed their proficiency testing and blind laboratory samples. All of their results were within testing parameters, and they got a certificate of excellence, which is attached here, which is pretty cool for our wastewater treatment facility. The state collected its first round fourth quarter of influent and effluent samples in order to perform state-funded PFOA testing. They will be back in January for the first quarter of 2024 sampling. The new SCADA computer system is scheduled for installation next week. We will be able to work around the system installation using backup methods we have already established and tested. The installation should take about 3 days to complete. She will be updating the master EU log to incorporate any changes made since the last quarterly billing went out. This is done as needed and sent to Tara and the listers for their use. We have been working on completing state-approved wastewater correspondence courses, which are required for their licensing renewals. There are some fine-tuning of the new upgraded heating system that needed to be done on site. The contractor came right out and took care of it in an efficient manner. They finished installing all of the final new electrical cabinet upgrades at PV1. The lighting has been installed as well. We have been monitoring the new water system being installed at Pownell Estates to ensure the wastewater system is not affected. There were 3 mobile homes removed from lots, which we were not notified about. Since we needed to make sure the cleanouts were properly capped, we reached out to the construction company and verified the locations of capped cleanouts. One was left open, which the crew corrected in a timely manner. All of the drawings have been recorded. PC3 and PC2 had alarms due to plugged check valves. These were caused by flushable wipes. Once again, they should not be flushed into the system. They are causing huge problems, and problems equal money spent to correct the problem. We are ready for the cold weather at the pump stations and the wastewater treatment facility. All scheduled maintenance activities are being performed, and the wastewater treatment facility and pump stations remain in excellent physical and operating condition.
Thank you, Darcy.
Just if I could comment, I have to say that the professionalism of those updates is really outstanding. And it reflects the professionalism that she does in managing that facility.
As far as zoning goes, there's nothing major going on, outside of, general permitting. Working on a couple of projects, but nothing concrete. Health officer, thank God you're here. There's nothing, had a couple of things this week, or since the last meeting, that I reported on that have surfaced, but they're still in the process, and I am going to work. Samantha or Sam, which would you prefer? Okay, I'm gonna work hand in hand with Samantha. We met today, Tara, Samantha and I, and, because of the complexity of a couple of those situations that we're involved in, I'm gonna be by her side. She's gonna be the lead person on these, but I'm going with her, and we're gonna deal with it together. I'm not gonna leave her hanging on a couple of these situations, so. That's it for me. Any other town officials? So that brings me to the introduction of our new town health officer, Samantha Emraz, right? Rose. I knew that. I knew we looked that up. Would you come up, Samantha, please? Sure. She's our new health officer, as of November 1st. She was appointed by the state after a recommendation from the select board. So, take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Samantha, or Sam, it doesn't matter to me. My background is in nursing. I've been in healthcare my entire life. I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to working with people and getting to know people in the community, and be easy on me. I have a learning curve.
Welcome, Samantha. It's really good to have you. You interviewed very well, as you can tell.
Thank you.
Board have any other board members have any questions for Samantha or anything? We're all good.
No,
Thanks for
Perfect. Good night.
welcome. We're looking forward to working with you.
We have, she's been given her laptop, her town issued phone. We showed her, Tara showed her the space, she has access to everything in the town office, whenever, so we took care of all that today.
Yep.
Perfect. BCRC presentation and citing criteria.
Thank you so much.
The presentation, that's on the, also on a thumb drive, really, it's the easiest way to have it for me.
Yep, you guys can come on up.
All right.
Wherever you wanna situate yourself.
If you can introduce yourselves, that'd be great, John. Please,
Gotta get those things.
when you get that. Just so, we know who they are, just so everybody else does.
Long time since I used that thumb drive. Last thing on there is 2018.
Geez, the camera doesn't even. It's recognize you guys yet.
Guys can't.
Not yet. No.
Oh, it's just showing you trying to open
Let me.
Not open it.
Can see
it. Maybe open it and then click share screen or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna save it, because that's what I did, but it's not working. Let me save it.
Just gonna introduce ourselves in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, my name is Scott Lyon. I'm with the Bennington County Regional Commission. I'm land use and economic development planner. I also work on the sanitation stuff. Yeah.
I'm Jonathan Cooper. I manage the Community and Economic Development Program at the BCRC. So we are delighted to be able to join you tonight. I'm going to try out my audience patter while we wait for the thing to load. So we'll see how it works. I know this project has been a long time in coming, so thank you for your patience as we worked through this. I think as it had been sort of a Lazarus project where we wasn't included in state funding rounds, and then it was, and so we had to sort of reallocate some hours and move things around. So it's we'll be looking forward to thank you in advance for your patience, and I hope you had a chance to review the documents. But what we viewing from home. Or might have an interest in this down the road.
How weird.
Yeah, it's on my screen, but it's not showing you guys the right.
I can see the file,
Yeah,
right? It's not open yet, but I can see it from home.
it is open on my computer.
It's opening on hers, but it's not sharing with the screen, sharing with.
You don't have multiple screens, do you? No, okay. Well, while we're waiting for that, I did watch the planning commission meeting. It must have been a year ago now, or a while ago, where BCRC came in, and Jonathan, I think it was the same two, right? They came in and initially talked about the project, and it was very clear from your presentation and answering their questions that you had a very good handle on what it was we were asking of you. And I have read the report, and I have to say that from the report, it looks like it's very clear that you understood what we wanted, and what you put out for this report is very clear as well. I'm really looking forward to the presentation.
We go home now because that's great. Thank you, Bob. Yeah, so we'll get this up and running shortly.
There's always something, you know, it's just.
There we go. Thank you.
I have to stop live stream to do it, so it won't be live stream on Facebook. Is that okay?
That's why.
Yeah.
Okay, Cat TV is still on
Yeah,
now?
I'll
Okay.
upload the video after the Facebook.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, we have it in our, I didn't know if you could open it, but you got it, you're good. Good job. Thank you for your patience, everyone.
So to begin, so we had sort of produced the siting criteria plan for community and economic development, and tonight we're going over that sort of distillation, as I mentioned. And so that's Scott and Jonathan, and so thank you in advance for your time tonight, and we can proceed to the next slide, in which we have a bit of a sort of recap of the project background for any member of the public who had not been able to be a part of that previous meeting. We're looking to determine the criteria for 4 distinct scenarios under the funding provided by the state of Vermont. It was for residential, commercial, mixed use, and industrial uses. These 4 distinct scenarios would have their own criteria. And we would apply that criteria to identify up to 5 lots per scenario that meshed well with the criteria for that scenario. We began with a much longer list, and through our conversations with the Planning Commission and that approach, we were able to sort of pare that down. The criteria kind of give you a 30,000-foot view, but we can't just trust the 30,000-foot view. And so Joel Burrington, Darcy Pruden, Mark Smith, they gave us the 30-foot view, as did the Planning Commission. So we could sort of combine both of those. There's one word in bold, in capital letters and underlined on that slide right now, and that is hypothetical. It is, these are real sites. These are places in town that belong to people who have a history with those places. And it's important from our perspective for the BCRC to make it clear that this is not compulsory, this is not commandments, this is examples of the kinds of development that could occur within the town based on these criteria. And so part of, I think, what we did include in the report for the select board was an example of some door knockers we sort of left behind on people's doorknobs, letting them know if they wanted to talk to us, we could have a conversation about, here's something we'll be talking about at a select board meeting. We don't want you to just find out the day of a select board meeting. And I think we ended up having conversations either in person that day or via phone with 8 of the 2 dozen or so that we sort of had leave behinds that we had. So it was good. We were able to provide some information to the public in advance of this meeting. So I think we can move to the next slide, which adds a little bit of additional context and rationale for the project. One of those is that municipalities are being asked and have been asked over the last few decades to get in the game. A developer, entrepreneur, business owner in town, a lot of times there's an idea, and I think a lot of town officials end up hearing, is there anything that you have? Do you have any programs? Can the state support this? So some towns are being asked to sort of consider expanded roles, maybe in areas where they hadn't operated before. And so that's sort of reasonable to consider then the how and the why and the where for this. The report and the presentation contemplate some of those potential municipal roles and scenarios. So hypothetical, potential, those are words that we'll be saying a lot tonight to really reassure everyone that this is not a what ought to happen, but rather just here's some examples. Another way to think about additional context is sort of if nowadays there's a lot of requests to get in the game, if we go back a generation, things are a little different, and they're a little different in a lot of ways. Both the town itself and its population and the total number of jobs within the town have declined by about the same amount over the last 30 years. But it's a 6.5% decline in people and about 60% decline in jobs. So it makes a lot of sense to be thinking about development opportunities that may bring more jobs into Pownell, because it had those jobs in the not too distant past. I did want to point out from the data perspective, school employees were counted locally in 1990. They're now part of the SVSU, so they're included in the Bennington employment total. So about the 3 dozen folks that work down at Pownell Elementary, yes, they work in Pownell, but they don't show up in that 140 number. But housing, I want to also mention, is economic and community development. The demand from renters, from young families, from seniors, some of whom live in town and would like a sort of a better match for what they need based on the family size or based on their household size, or for people that are evaluating the town from elsewhere in the region or from parts beyond. There has been that continued post-pandemic interest in the South Shire. Business development that you may see in the downtown of, say, Bennington does over time. We can spill over into neighboring and adjacent towns, Woodfords, your Shaftesbury's, your Pownells. And so these are other reasons to be sort of thinking along these lines and along these 4 scenario. Hannah, may I ask for the next slide? And that next one is about sort of, I think, if I recall correctly, a little bit of regional context. And this is always just a little reminder, maybe for some folks who are viewing on CAT TV, et cetera, that as much as the valleys can protect us and sort of frame us, we're still within an hour of an international airport. We're within 45 minutes of an interstate. It's remarkable that within 10 minutes, there's a full hospital that's received a $40 million emergency department upgrade that has a campus inside of our town. And so there are some amenities here, our libraries, our outdoor recreation, and any number of other assets. And there's also, to look at our workforce for a moment, there's 175 jobs in Pownell, and that does include the elementary school number. But of the 1,500 residents of Pownell, we're working about a little under a tenth work from home, which is an interesting number. That's something that's different from back in 1990. But about 3/4 of us work in Bennington County, so most people who aren't working in town are heading north with a pretty reasonable and attractive commute time, 23 minutes, lower than the national average. But we have a net employment outflow in Pownell every day of 1,200 residents. And where are they going? Well, if they're lucky, they're going just 10 minutes to any of the 12,500 or so jobs in Bennington or Williamstown. A little farther afield, another 5,000 in North Adams. At a half an hour mark, you get into the Arlington job market, and they're 1,000, mostly in the manufacturing sector. And then we move out to 40 to 45 minutes drive time. We hit that over 50,000 in the Pittsfield, Troy, Manchester area. So altogether, within a 45-minute drive, we're looking at somewhere over 75,000 jobs, or 70,000 jobs, which is not a small number, and that gives people options to the north, south, east, and west. So with some of these contextual pieces in place and sort of having gone over the background of the project, I think our next slide is a view of the criteria themselves. A little probably easier to see on CAT TV than for the select board, and our apologies for that. But there's 9 criteria here, and instead of going through each of these, 36 squares, it's important just to point out that we have acreage as one, slope, wetlands, floodplain, and rare species are 3 that have to do with sort of a presence, a yes/no criteria in the village center. Are we within it? Are we outside of it? We wanted to make sure that we were assessing adjacent uses, so non-industrial uses adjacent to residential uses, and site access. We're really, for example, paying attention to ensuring that industrial sites have that highway or state route access, as well as commercial. One thing that's interesting with respect to a town like Pownell from a geology perspective is slope. When you sort of have a max of about 15% for residential development, and that's the most forgiving of the scenarios, that takes a lot of the town out of the equation. And our next slide sort of shows where we ended up focusing much of our attention. As you can imagine, it is along routes 346, Route 7, and their intersection. For residential and mixed use, a location within a village center, a designated village center, of which there are 3 in Pownell, North Pownell, Pownell Center, and then Pownell, I think they call it, by the library and just off 346, are places where mixed use and residential makes a lot of sense. The state's sort of looking for that. That's what these programs are set up to encourage. But we also see that we're sort of looking at our industrial areas in the southern portion of the town. That making a lot of sense for some of the continued industrial sites that Scott will talk about in a moment. The cluster around Pownell Center, and then just north of that, along the sort of Dollar General and Route 7 stretch there. And then some opportunities that arose in North Pownell, and I think almost entirely within the village center there, and that are somewhat, given the conversation we heard earlier tonight, a little bit of that outdoor recreation sort of gateway for what lies on the western side of Dean Road. There's a couple of interesting spots that Scott will get into in a moment, but we have 2 sites that are on the western side of the Hoosick River that sort of in either a flight of imagination for the industrial site or for just presenting an interesting opportunity for residential. Give us a little bit of space outside of those 3 focus areas that I mentioned. So Scott, can I turn it over to you to talk about some of these questions a little bit?
Sure. Next slide, please. So to zoom in on the Pownell Center area, some of the sites that we selected here. Sites C1 and I1, and by the way, the planning board had a question about the numbering, and it really just goes from west to east and north to south. So there is no, site number 1 does not mean that it is a higher priority for the town than site number 5. It is just numbered, for the sake of, based on, geographical location. And some of these sites are also shared among other ones. So you'll see that the C1 and I1 are both shared 3 parcels that together create up a 29-acre area, including right now a farm store, some light manufacturing, and a jewelry and trading area that exists in the town there. And they have some right now currently a fairly small footprint, using not very much of their lot size for their businesses in either of those locations. And we feel that they would be very attractive for either commercial or industrial development, either as potential for expanding existing businesses or for attracting new development, potentially attracting new development, especially if you manage to cluster the sites together, if the property owners are interested in working together to attract development together. The next site, R2, is Pettit Drive. So there's an 80-acre parcel along Pettit Drive. It has a few single-family homes on there right now, but there is a large area where there was historically a gravel operation back there, and some pre-existing access roads that are dirt roads right there right now that we think would be a good opportunity for some kind of a co-housing cluster development, potentially senior housing, because that would be a spot that is sort of equidistant from the new SBMC Powell campus and the hospital up in Bennington. Also accessible via bus route if you're going to have that type of a community living there, with its access directly to Route 7. Schoolhouse Road on R3, that's just a nice 6-acre lot right next to an elementary school, right next to daycare. Be a great place to raise families, a great place to put some kind of more clustered together housing than you would get obviously in a different section of the town. It also still has some walkability access to Center Street. If you can get across 7 and go down Center Street, you can get to this area of Panel Center, which we also are hoping will see some additional expanded development in the future. C2 is a Panel Center infill. So there are 5 lots in Panel Center. Some of them we've recommended for just commercial use. Some of them we've recommended for a mix of commercial use and residential use in both sites R4 and M3. This is really sort of expanding on the idea or capitalizing on the investments that the town has made in this zone already to make it a real centerpiece of what Pownell is, and really set for village scale development. The commercial lots, we feel that they're more facing of Route 7 than they are sort of facing internally. The ones that we've sort of identified as solely commercial lots, whereas the residential and the mixed use potential lots we feel like should be a lot more centered on Center Street. It's a lot more focused on Center Street and development that potential that's here. Again, also with some smaller footprint buildings and some lots that are empty. Want to move to the next slide? In North Pownell, we've developed, we've identified a series of sites. R1, we call this North Pownell infill sites. Now these tend to be large lots, and what we've outlined in the report is that we would want to cluster and focus development along Route 346. So, there are agricultural uses happening on the 3 sites we've identified here. We feel that we could continue agricultural uses for most of these areas, but also use the front acreage of these sites to expand the village character of the area. M1, we feel like that's a real nice opportunity for mixed use here. There isn't as much potential for adding commercial capacity in the area here, but the intersection there, North Pownell Road 346, already has an existing motorcycle shop there. There's been a number of businesses that have been there. We feel like adding additional residences to the downtown area would help support retail establishments in the area, and potentially that would be more building there. That also is a fairly large lot with some back acreage that has storage and sort of trailers there. And we feel like there could also be some additional housing, accessory dwelling units or other things that could go in that space. Similarly, on Dean Road, we've identified that as a potential for both commercial development and for mixed-use development. The Dean Road General Store is a historic commercial use there that has been vacant for a number of years. We feel that the building itself could be redeveloped and turned to have a historic reuse of the apartments above it into residential, and then also continue to have a general store there, sort of bookending, between sites M1 and M2, commercial uses on either end of the district, sort of allowing people to sort of welcome in there and allowing residents to go back and forth to the areas. The other thing that's interesting there on site C3 and M2 is it's adjacent to a town garage, which has potential redevelopment. If there was some kind of deal with the property owner and the town together, they might be able to attract a more serious developer if both parcels were put into land there. The town garage could be placed in other areas of the town. The town has a lot of land that it owns, and we think, again, I'm not 100% certain as to where that might go, but it is something worth considering when looking at development opportunities, especially because, again, to leverage investments and things happening in the town, that will also be the site where the access road is to the new Pownell Town Forest and Recreation area. So it would be a very attractive spot to add some residential housing. If you could move to the next slide. And finally, in the southern area of the town, there's a lot of activity here. Most of our industrial uses are recommended to take place in this zone. And there's a mix of spaces. So some of these spaces already have some industrial uses. We have site I2 that is Mac molding. That's existing, but we feel like it is being currently underutilized because it is not plugged into the sanitation system. Right now, it's mostly being a warehousing space, and if we wanted to expand employment opportunities within the town boundaries, Mac Molding as an existing business that has needs for expansion and is a growing organization, would be able to do a lot more with the property that they already own there if they were able to access that sewer system. Adjacent to that is site I3 on Lincoln Street, which is 18 acres, 18-acre field to the south of that, which may also be a place where additional industrial opportunity could spill over from that Mac Molding site or be attracted to other industrial uses. Site M4, this is on Orchard Main Street, so this is within your denser village center. We feel that there are possibilities to have on Main Street fronting there. Those are just deep lots that have a lot of space in between the buildings. And we think that they represent a good opportunity to build some additional buildings, to create a little more activity, to have a little bit of a hub there where there's already starting to be some momentum around the church and building. There was some coffee uses there. And we think that could be a little bit more of a hub of activity if there was some additional commercial and residential put into that space, and it could become a nice little walkable centerpiece to the area. The next slide on the list is sites C4 and M5. Now these represent where we're very close to the junction of the two major areas in the area, so very high visibility, very high value for commercial uses. These two sites are also impacted, or one of these two sites is actually heavily impacted by the Home Act because which is a law that passed in the state legislature earlier, which requires municipalities to have at least 5 units per acre in areas that have both sewer and water access, because the most areas of the town are on well water, and this area of the town is connected to public water infrastructure. This site is where the Home Act is mostly relevant, and there's an outline of the impacts of the Home Act in the report, and specifically outlined which sites are impacted by the Home Act there. But we feel like the commercial uses on that site are sort of paramount due to the high visibility and due to it being sort of the centerpiece, the premier intersection of the two major roads in town. So we would encourage that to not just become residential based on the new density that the Home Act is imposing onto the site, but also, the town to try to make commercial activity happen in those spaces as well. Next spot is I-4, which is a racetrack triangle. So a lot of the problems with development of the redevelopment of the old Green Mountain Racetrack is that getting across those railroad tracks, especially for industrial uses, is extremely difficult. The railroad does not want to offer access on that, and but there is a portion of that property which could be subdivided. It is a 9-acre section east of the railroad that has road access and direct access to Route 7, and that could be a nice place to kickstart some development there. R5 is a site on Northwest Hill Road, so this is on the other side of the river, and this is an area where sewer access has recently been expanded to that section of town, and it is just a lot of large open fields and very large lots. We feel that that's a great opportunity for subdivisions and for people to build more single-family housing in the more rural residential model that a lot of town already has in place. C5 is the Hart Gravel Bank. So that is an area that is no longer being used as a gravel bank, but does not have good access to infrastructure like some other areas. And so it would need a very light traffic kind of footprint to be utilized to the maximum potential. So things like self-storage, warehousing kind of spaces, other commercial uses like mini golf, or things that would be a not as heavily trafficked in and out use, where people would not need to have regular use of water and in those spaces. Site I-5 is the Lovett Cemetery extension. So this is an 18-acre riverfront portion. Also on the other side of the river. It's on the other side of the river from the from the Green Mountain Racetrack. And we feel that that's an area that a developer who would be potentially interested in the Green Mountain Racetrack might also be interested in expanding their footprint into an adjacent space. And it would be an area that could be rezoned for that purpose. Right now it's farm space, and it has potential to be more with substantial enough investment, potential to also be an industrial area. Again, that's a bigger lift because that would include adding additional access, but we're kind of envisioning that as a sort of carrot that the town may be able to use at some point, when the larger conversations around Green Mountain Racetrack come into play. So you can move to the next slide. This is not completely prescriptive. We understand that the town has different priorities, and that even the types of recommendations or the items that we've all listed here, some of them, would contradict each other. You cannot pass all of the zoning amendments to put together every single opportunity that we've outlined in this report. So for example, the town needs to consider what strategy it wishes to pursue. The first site we brought up was site C1 and I1, which, could end up being as a nice 18-acre site, something very similar to Cocher Drive in Bennington, where you could capitalize on the pre-existing Family Dollar there and have some additional, commercial development of that scale, on those other spaces. Or if the town wanted to do something much more similar to, where Tennis Way in Dorset, where there's an industrial park that's, has buildings that would also fit within that scale. They would have to obviously choose, different zoning, outcomes at that point to make, to encourage or discourage either one of those developments as the town would want. Either way, we think the conversations with all parties are important there. If you have a conversation with Dion Snowshoes and they say, well, we've been thinking about expanding and it might be nice to have some kind of larger industrial footprint there, that might be the kind of conversation the town would want to have to help clarify which direction they would want to go with parcels like that. Similarly, an existing farm store might want to have, an expanded retail presence in that space, and the town might choose to go a different direction in that case. So there's a site-by-site list in the report of how each of the opportunities could be implemented, and what sort of changes would need to happen to our underlying zoning bylaws in order to pursue those opportunities. Next slide. Another proposal is we recommend that the town consider adopting a new village center zoning district. A previous report by BCRC identified that, within our village centers, which are largely what people identify with as their emotional core of the town. Think about how they associate the town. You just can't build it, most of what exists in those spaces right now today, based with the current zoning that's in place. So in North Pownell, only 70% of the parcels that exist there could be built today under the existing zoning bylaws. In Pownell Center, only, again, 69% of the parcels, building structures could be built there with the existing zoning bylaws, and in Pownell Village Center, only 60%. So in order to allow infill to happen, in order to allow the traditional development patterns that exist within our Vermont downtowns, which are also what state level initiatives and funding are all coming down the pipeline for, to encourage the cluster development in these downtown cores, these village centers that we've got designation for specifically. We also need to change the underlying legal structures there. So we recommend this new village center zoning district. And if you hit the next page, this effectively just, removes obstacles to development of that type of building. It changes things related to unit size, setback requirements, parking requirements, expanding the size of the accessory dwelling units. The law for accessory dwelling units was set up at sort of the state minimum standards for the ADU law when that was passed by the state. And, I just looked at the existing outbuildings on the sites, what people's garages and barns and the size of those were. And I said, if someone wanted to convert that into an ADU, the ADU laws that exist now would mean they're not able to use all of the square footage of the space yet. So I recommended expansions based on the existing building footprints in the area of outbuildings. And then also to just boost the multifamily dwellings cap right now. Everything still would need to be approved by the planning commission. But right now, a site plan for, no one can approach them with a site plan for more than 8 units. This just bumps it up a little bit to allow a potential developer to approach them for up to 12 units. And again, these are all considerations. The town has to, choose its own direction here, which standard they want. And one of the questions that I also posed, because a lot of these are based on, existing building heights and the types of buildings that are there, what the sort of individual standards for each village center might be, or if you'd like to have one standard that applies to all of the village centers. So for example, in the zoning center district that I created, it allows for there to be wall-to-wall buildings like you have across the street here on Center Street. But that type of typology is actually not that common in North Pownell. So you may wish to look again at sort of the design guidelines in those and consider if you would like to apply individual, dimensional requirements to the different 3 zones, or whether you would like to, sort of keep it standardized for across all 3. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Scott. So we are rounding third, and the baseball metaphor is also valuable because there's been not a lot of discussion about home runs, and a lot of what we're talking about is singles, hitting for contact. That's the sort of looking at these smaller areas, or looking at these, building these conversations with business owners is about sort of growing what we have, and it's about reaching that lower hanging fruit to build momentum, to build trust, to build activity, which is something that we had thought was also valuable to mention here. On this slide, however, we have a little digest of some programs for real estate development, some specific programs that can be relevant to some of the things that we had discussed today. To begin with, the Northern Border Regional Commission is a federal program. Through their Catalyst program, they can provide 50 to 80%, depending on local economic conditions, to support the development of public infrastructure. So there are a lot of times it's water, it's wastewater, it's transportation, so where they would spur economic development. So a wastewater connection to an existing manufacturing facility, for example, would be something that's really relevant to that specific program. That's an annual program, and they have boosted appropriations in recent years. The Vermont Community Development Program is the vehicle in Vermont that allocates the U.S. HUD funding through the Community Development Block Grants. So you may have heard the CDBG acronym in the past. That supports a wide range of activities, including planning, feasibility studies, implementation, and then construction and implementation. And that would require a 10% match from the municipality for activities, and that can include housing, that can include additional construction and for economic development, largely targeting poverty relief. It can also be applied to what is broadly called blight removal. So it has a fresh start component in its allowable uses as well. Private activity bonds, which are worth mentioning, issued by the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank, allow the private sector to access tax-exempt bonds that are available to municipalities at the generally more favorable rates that municipalities enjoy due to their more secure bond ratings. The private entity is the one that really holds the bond, is responsible for repayment, but there's a set cap each year in Vermont, so that the bond bank has an allocation, but that's another sort of begins with a conversation, but that's a role that some municipalities do play, along with revolving loan funds. The only town in southwestern Vermont with a revolving loan fund is Bennington, but some towns, Brandon, more on the scale of Pownell's population size, have them as well. Jericho, Richmond, some places, some pretty small towns as well with fewer than 1,000 people, providing access to capital to entrepreneurs, to incumbent businesses, and generally having different levels of oversight and sort of what you might loosely call red tape from one town to the next, but different rates, different requirements. But this is a sort of resource for providing capital to incumbent businesses, to startups, people looking or interested in making investments in the town. And there are many other roles that can be played, not just the two that are at the bottom, but tax abatement programs, the tax increment financing districts, project-based TIF, which is still sort of hung up in the legislature, as well as the creation of business or commercial districts and improvement districts for making concentrated improvements, and generally speaking, from concentrated funding in certain parts of town. Some towns feel more comfortable with that. So that does bring us into this, into a conclusion slide. Yeah, so Scott's phone is happy about it. We're finally done. And so if there are any questions, this just takes us back to that first map of the entire town. So thank you for your patience. And if there's anything you'd like to discuss, we'd be happy to hear your thoughts.
Board have any questions?
Oh, sure. This is only if you have it. I'm not asking you to go out and get information. But earlier in the slides, you were talking about it was a comparison of 1990 to 2020 on number of jobs and number of employers. You wouldn't happen to have that breakdown by public sector versus private sector, would you?
I would actually, yes. I can pull that up in about 3 minutes, but right now the part of the private sector or the public sector hit was a lot of the school reallocation. So that were you talking about from 1990 or from present day?
Well, really, I'm looking for the health, right? So we can see that a whole lot of employers no longer exist, and from 1990 to now, and the number of jobs in the Pownell area dropped quite a bit too. I don't remember what the numbers were, but you saw them disappear quite a bit, or it went down quite a bit. Having the breakdown of the number of jobs that were then public sector versus private sector in the same comparison today would give us a better indication, I think, of economic health, which I think is, I think we can all say it's not that good, but really the private sector, to me anyway, is what really defines your economic health.
That's true. There was, so of the 242 fewer jobs in the town of Pownell compared to 1990, the decline in the private sector was 190, and the decline in the sort of public sector was 52. So,
oh, wow. That's, I'm impressed that you were able to pull those up that quickly. Thank you.
It was a little, happy to do so.
Any more questions? You guys?
Not at the moment.
Yeah, I know there's a lot all at once, and so we're always happy to sort of continue.
And we're here at BCRC to, help guide when you make certain decisions about things and when you have opportunities and, there's, if a distiller shows up in the area and says, hey, I want to do something, and you say, oh, we don't know how to expand sewer to that area so they can do things properly, we'll then work with you to try to figure out what the right.
That was kind of
opportunities are.
kind of question I was gonna ask you guys is when you did your studies here in the areas that are or potentially can be connected to our wastewater, was that taken into effect the size of our system? And does our system have the capacity? I mean, and if Darcy was here, I know Darcy could probably help us answer these questions, okay? But I didn't know if you guys had covered that part of it.
Yeah, so we did speak with Darcy, and they have some expansion capacity, but not a lot.
Right.
I assumed you did, but I'd like to.
Yeah, we had some work with Darcy and also some, but, yeah.
And it's interesting how it is, they're finite resources, and as the fire districts brought along mobile home park that had sort of succeeded in being able to connect to the system, Mark was clear that did have an impact on capacity. And so I think a lot of the future conversations would definitely get to that question pretty quick about capacity in both those instances, because certainly in different parts of town, some wells are 20 feet down, some are hundreds of feet down, and where there is a capacity, it can't be just allocated lightly.
And there may be opportunities, and again, I don't know exactly what the requirements are for certain grants, but I was just at a conference earlier this week, and I took a tour of Newmarket, New Hampshire, and they received a large USDA grant to expand their sewer infrastructure. And then it actually ended up becoming a revenue generator for the town because every other municipality in their region was at max capacity for their sewage. And they were able to then take all of the folks who had private septic pumping systems for all of the cesspools for the single family residents around the region, and then process that waste there. So it became a good opportunity for the town to be a revenue generator based on that USDA grant.
I mean, that was just, I know I've had extensive conversations with Darcy over that, being the zoning administrator, I've talked with her some, over a bunch of different things. So that was just I won't call it a red flag, but it was one of those, flags that popped up in my head. It's like, okay, we're talking about all of these, and look, it's a great study and there's some really.
Yeah.
And so the situation with Mac Molding that we mentioned too, I mentioned the distillery just a moment ago because in Montpelier, there's a good example of them using a tool called the TIF, which is a tax increment financing tool, where they had a distillery say, I want to be in this area. And they said, well, we don't have the capacity in our sewer. So what they did is they took a municipal bond out and they created a TIF district to sort of pay for that municipal bond to expand their sewage infrastructure too. So with the right opportunity, with the right partners, these things are possible. The legal tools are out there.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys because you offered a good variety as far as ideas and whatnot.
Well, I
believe our sewer, if I remember right, we're at like 30 to 40% advancement capacity on our sewer system.
I'd be totally shooting in the dark on that one with Darcy. I don't want to talk about it.
Talking to her when I first.
Going a little bit further into I would recommend that everybody on the board read the report as well. I mean, it was a good PowerPoint presentation, but the report, I really like the way you went into each area and talked about what the hurdles were to get in there and some of the benefits if you do, and even some options for getting state funding or working with the highway department or whatever to gain access to some of those areas. And you laid it out really nice. And the benefits of it, right? There was one that there was a hurdle on I-5, I think, industrial area I-5. You laid out some possible ways of getting the access, but also laid out that once you gain that access, you then have the leverage of the entire racetrack area. And we know that railroad or getting on the other side of the railroad tracks has been an issue for as long as I've been on the board. I guess you have to be born there.
Right side of the tracks or the wrong side of the tracks?
The board have any more questions for either of these two gentlemen? I think it's an incredible report that is very thorough and does exactly. I think it does exactly what we asked for, right? Meaning from the planning commission standpoint and the select board standpoint, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Which brings us to community use of the town office meeting space, continued discussion and approval of policy. Thank you.
I guess I should have said possible approval, but I sent it to you all again, red highlights. And the information that needed to be discussed. I apologize, I'm trying to pull mine up right now.
I know I'm looking forward to it.
You want facility?
So let's look at the facility use policy first. How's that sound?
Yep. We got it.
From the 7th, right?
Yeah. It's in your folder also. So again, just to restate that this is a VLCT model policy, I just basically highlighted in red the things that I thought you all should discuss. And most of it revolves around fees. The facilities to which this would apply, I assume we would have it apply to all of our town facilities, including the old town hall, once that's available to use, the skate park or this office. And it should include all of our parks, not just the skate park, but any town facility that's available for use.
So let me ask a question and maybe we don't even know the answer.
Okay.
I know that in the past, And I'm not even exactly positive which organization used the Little League field for a movie night, a family movie night. Which, by the way, I think was an awesome idea. So that would be a use of one of our facilities. Correct, right?
Yep.
That would be something where if it was I guess it doesn't matter which group was using it, we could waive a fee. We wouldn't necessarily have to charge a fee for it.
Right.
Right?
I mean,
Yeah,
no,
they didn't charge a fee to,
Right. No, and I just wanna,
Well, as a I can't even talk, I'm so
that's good.
tired.
Try again.
We're not allowed to make money. So to charge for something, I get why we're doing it, but I had a thought of, instead of writing the check out to us or something, that we'd have like 3 or 4 choices that they could write the check out to for, like as a donation, like the firehouse or the rescue
well,
squad.
you're not truly making money. It's part of the upkeep of the building,
Okay.
maintenance, cleaning and that kind of stuff. I guess is the way I look at it.
Yeah, you'd be covering your insurance fees and, I don't think we're gonna, I don't think the town's gonna get rich
Rich off of it,
and
no.
our taxes are all gonna
No,
go
no.
away by a church group having a movie night at the Little League field 3
Right.
times a year. And I'm just using that as an
I
example,
get it.
right? Yeah, and I don't even know who did it. I think it was a church group.
can't remember.
But it doesn't matter.
Really nice.
Like I said, I think it was a great night.
Well, one thing, unless it costs us something, then maybe it's just a deposit and you get your deposit back if you leave it in good shape. Something to think about anyway.
It's a good idea.
I'm not sure are we ready to decide tonight on how we want to, what we want to?
No,
Maybe we
I'm
are.
not. I'm not ready for it, I don't think. I'd like to give it a little bit of, I think this is a great model. And I think we should have some discussion on a fee schedule. I think the deposit is probably a really good idea. I think I guess my personal feeling on this, and I'd like everybody to think about this a little bit actually and bring it back, to be honest with you. I think if one of our in-town organizations wants to use one of our facilities, I'll go back to the movie night, right? We get a deposit, but if somebody comes from somewhere else, then maybe we charge a fee. If somebody's in out of town, not that we're gonna get that, I don't know,
I think it has to be fair and equitable, regardless of where they're from. I think. I would suggest making it across the board, regardless of where they're from. You may want to stipulate whether you can have, be making a profit or not, those kind of things. Like if somebody wanted to do, a tag sale or something, I don't know, I'm just coming up with an idea. And they were making a profit off of it. That's also different than, say, the fire department wanted to do bingo or something. That's, those are very different.
Well, I think we have to be careful with that, right? I think we have to be careful where, and I'm gonna pick on you again, Megan. If Megan wants to have a family tag sale at the Little League field because it's a really good location, right? And her family's gonna be down there selling all of their stuff, I kind of think I'd frown on that. But if the center church wanted to have a fundraiser at the Little League field, and I'm gonna stay there, right, just because, for simplicity. If they wanna have, because of the location, and they wanna have a bake sale and a tag sale at the Little League field, then I think that's a whole different, right? I think that's a whole different can of worms. I don't think we should get into something where private individuals are using the town facilities for, making money. If private individuals are, if a private individual's teaching a cooking class, right, and we have a kitchen set up in the old town office, being hypothetical, I'm gonna steal their word, then I think that's a little different too.
So should we look into language that lays out like like a nonprofit
Well-
agency doing fundraising versus a for-profit business or a for-profit event? I don't really know how to
Yeah, I don't
lay
know.
that out.
I think that's where we need to, we, the board, and Tara, feel free to do for more research on it if you want to. But you need to come back and say, what are our visions for how this is going to be used? Because I think, Mike, you raised a lot of good questions. A lot of good questions about, I mean, we don't want to be the arm of a business. If we're gonna allow people to make money on town property, then we're essentially taking away some of the expenses of a business. And then if you allow an individual to do that, then you have to allow a business. What if like a local chain store wanted to extend and use our office or use our spaces, and we say no? Well, then, will they have the but you let this person make money? So to make sure that we're treating everybody the same. I think that has to be clear. And if it's a nonprofit, we need to be clear about what kind of nonprofits that we would allow and what we wouldn't. I think we all have to go back and think about, and maybe do some research about what's normal, what are the pros and cons. We don't want to make money on it. We just want to make sure that we have a facility that certainly agree with local churches and local events and movie nights and things like that. But and we also need to talk about, as you brought up, Mike, the whether how out of towners, are we really going to allow Pownell facilities to be used for somebody that came here from Arizona that wants to do a presentation? I think you would need to be sponsored by somebody in Pownell. Those are the kinds of things we have to think about. And maybe we come back to the next meeting with some ideas. And the last thing I'll say about it is I do like the shell documents. The 3 documents that you provided, Tara, are good. They're a great start. And it's a good step forward toward a policy that I think gives our residents some more options.
I think it's on the board's shoulders now to come back with some stuff.
I think it is because,
Right.
well, and I want to encourage you all to do it probably for the next meeting, because we're getting into town meeting time, and I've had requests. This is another thing you should think about. Are we going to allow people, if they want to have a caucus, are they allowed to use town property to do that, or do they have to use the school still? That's another question that you all need to debate or think about.
When's our next scheduled meeting?
So if you all are okay with it, I was thinking the meeting that would regularly be on the 23rd, which is Thanksgiving, we'll have the following week on the 30th. So it'll be a special meeting, but it's a makeup for the regular.
Right.
I'm fine with that. I won't be here I wouldn't be here the 22nd to do it on the night before, or even the 21st.
Yeah, I think it's better to just go the 30th, because that week's kind of.
Everybody fine with that? We'll schedule a meeting for the 30th.
Yep.
I think this, Tara has provided us with enough documentation and enough background information. Now I think it falls onto us as board members to do our research on this as to what we want to do. I don't think we asked her or Hannah to do any more research on this. They've done it. Now it's on our shoulders to come back with questions and recommendations and move forward with the policy or not.
I agree. And while we're on the topic of this building in particular, our max occupancy is around 75 between this room and the other room.
Yeah, combined.
So I just was thinking I should probably contact the school to do town meeting there.
I think that's a good idea.
We don't want to limit the people that can attend.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Could you do that? The one thing I am gonna ask you to do, could you do, max occupancy for our buildings in general, so that we can have it on this for our policy? So for the Old Town building, or the Old Town office, and whatever buildings we're talking about, if we could just have that information, the only thing I'm gonna ask you to do on this.
Okay,
Okay? Is that fair?
that's fair. And I would have filled it in, but this policy was
Right.
from before I actually had the
Yeah,
numbers.
other than that, it's falling on our shoulders to come back and give you what we think should happen.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
We probably should look into signage for them, like have it posted. That way if
Max
anybody
occupancy.
questions it,
Oh, the maximum.
like, more so for this room and for
It's supposed
the
to
other.
be, it's supposed to be.
Our certificate of occupancy is out by the front
It's out by
door.
the
I can
front.
fill in the
That has to
occupancy part on it.
be. Board have anything else on this? I mean, I know we're not ready to approve a policy.
I think it's looking good.
I think we got some really good information tonight. No, it's our turn. Anything else? Perfect.
I have a comment, a question. So I attended tonight's meeting because I was told that you guys would be looking at the letters of interest for the Conservation Commission. My name is Megan Randall.
So Megan, we're going to the Conservation Commission right now. That's our next,
Are you gonna go
Item?
to that
that's
next?
our next agenda item.
Excuse me.
That's okay. I don't mean to interrupt, but that's where we're headed right
I
now.
thought you were closing up.
No.
Sounded
Nope.
like the end.
No, sorry. Oh, we got a little ways to go yet, sorry. And I understand if you thought that for sure. Which brings us to the Conservation Commission continued discussion and the letters of interest, and I think Bob had a good point. I don't think we're ready for the letters of interest that were submitted yet. I do want to discuss the Conservation Commission. And go from there, and then we'll have the public comment where you'll be able to, after we discuss this, you'll be able to talk about the letters of interest meeting. So I'm gonna open up the Conservation Commission, continue discussion.
Okay, so before jumping into the details of the Conservation Commission, I first want to apologize to everyone for the lack of understanding on my part. When we met on October 26th, I hadn't yet had an opportunity to gather all of the information I was hoping to share. So when I approached the board on the 26th regarding the Conservation Commission, it was an initial discussion to see if it was okay to research it out and find the details and start advertising and that sort of thing. At the time, the board discussed starting the commission back up. You all agreed that it would be good to keep it to a smaller number, so 5 regular voting members and 2 alternates. The board then voted 4-1 to allow me moving forward with this. So, again, to address one of Donna's points, the Conservation Commission was an active commission in the town of Pownell in the past, but unfortunately, I don't have the details of what the tasks they worked on were, what they did or did not accomplish. If anyone has those details, I would be glad to have them. And I'm sure that I will get a chance to dive into previous records. I just haven't yet. With that said, I do have the statutes just to share.
So I just say you're going to have to look back pretty far. I mean, I know that for my 6 years, there was never a Conservation Commission meeting.
Well, I know Bill Cottrell, our Buildings and Grounds person, has actually, he attempted to call or email back in 2020 regarding the conservation. So it's the Conservation Commission. So it's not an unheard of commission. It's certainly.
No, of course. I'm not saying it's unheard of.
That was.
It's but if you our town reports, there's no mention of it in the town plan, but our town reports have mentioned conservation, and I don't think it was until last year that it actually said commission. In previous reports, it just said conservation, and one person, 1 out of 5 was assigned, but never had a meeting. So as far as I know, it's been defunct for at least 6 years, and probably much longer, because I think it was pretty defunct when I came on the board. But in any case, what I think we ought to do is, and I think we're about to, have more discussion about the Pownell specifics. What does the Pownell Select Board expect out of this commission? More so than just the statute, because the statute lays out what it can do. And it's, if we're putting this together for Pownell, what I've heard is we need some assistance in, and it's probably accurate, we need some assistance in administering the newly acquired lands. But what do we exactly mean, and what does that look like, and where do we need the assistance, and do we have any other options? So that's the kind of thing I don't think we really talked about before creating the commission. And before we do this, or before we close up the interest, I think Pownell specific goals for the commission, plus a please apply by date on the website would probably be a good idea. So, everybody, you have until such and such a time in order to get your letters of interest in. And that should be a day or two before we discuss it again.
I would like to hear the statute,
But
because.
Megan, I got it. I promise. Exactly. Tara, could you read us the statute, from the state? And, then as a board, we can decide or not where we want to go with it, because I read the statute that you provided to us, and it is way more in depth than just forest management, for sure.
And I did refer to the forest management, but I didn't necessarily mean that the Conservation Commission would be doing the forest management plan.
Exactly.
We need people to really look at all of the land we have in town, what our needs are, what our agreements are currently on them, and to work within those agreements to establish something. And likely they will hire a company to do the forest management plan, but it sort of takes some of the load off of me doing that part of it.
Exactly.
And the VORIT grant, it didn't spark this or anything, but the VORIT grant is, it's a huge undertaking. We're gonna need not just a forest management plan, but we need trail management plans. And that's, a conservation commission would just be very helpful, I think, in that regard.
Well, after we listen to the statute, which I read extensively in the last 2 days,
Me too.
so that I really understand it, to be honest with you, because it is pretty extensive. I think it's gonna cover way more than a forest management plan.
But, well, and to be clear, we don't, when you create a commission, we ought to be doing it for whatever our specific needs are, not just any and everything that a commission could do, right? So Pownell has need, and the need right now is to help administer those lands and maybe in forest management. It's not necessarily all of the, 11 or so things that are identified by the statute. So in other towns, when they do it for specific reasons. They'll put a commission together, and then they will be tasked to go in and look at specific areas needed by whatever that town is. It wouldn't be a good idea to take in my opinion, it wouldn't be a good idea to create a commission and just give them full reign to go into everything that the statute allows them to do. That's really not what it's for. We as a select board ought to be deciding, and we as a town ought to be deciding what our specific needs are. But with that, we can go ahead and read the statute.
So the first one was section 4501, like cite as 24 VSA 4501, creation of a conservation commission. The conservation commission may be created at any time when a municipality votes to create one, or if the charter of a municipality permits it, when the legislative body of the municipality votes to create one. So that's the first one. The second one is 24 VSA 4505, and this is the powers and duties of conservation commissions. 1, make an inventory and conduct continuing studies of the natural resources of the municipality, including air, surface, and groundwaters and pollution thereof, soils and their capabilities, mineral and other resources, streams, lakes, ponds, wetlands, and floodplains, unique or fragile biologic sites, scenic and recreational resources, plant and animal life, especially the rare and endangered species, prime agricultural and forest lands and other open lands. 2, make and maintain an inventory of lands within the municipality which have historical, educational, cultural, scientific, architectural, man, I cannot read these words, archaeological values in which the public has an interest. Number 3, recommend to the legislative body of the municipality the purchase or the receipt of gifts of land or the rights thereto or other property for purposes of this chapter. 4, receive appropriations for operating expenses, including clerical help by appropriation through the budget of the legislative body. Receive money grants or private gifts from any source for the purpose of this chapter. Grants or gifts received by the trustee of public funds shall be carried in a conservation fund from year to year to be expended only for purposes of this chapter. 6, receive gifts of land or other properties for the purposes of this chapter by consent of the legislative body or by an affirmative vote by the municipality. 7, administer the lands, properties, and other rights which have been acquired by the municipality for the purposes of this chapter. 8, assist the local planning commission or the zoning board of adjustment or the district environmental commission by providing advisory environmental evaluations where pertinent to applications made to those bodies for permits for development. Number 9, cooperate with the local legislative body, planning commission, zoning board, and adjustment, road committee, or other municipal or private organizations on matters affecting the local environment or the natural resources of the municipality. 10, prepare, collect, publish, advertise, and dispute relevant books, maps, and other documents, and maintain communication with similar organizations, and encourage through educational activities the public understanding of local natural resources and conservation needs. 11, make a brief annual report to the municipality of its finances and transactions for the year just passed and its plan to put in prospects for the ensuing year. 24 VSA 4504, at its organizational meeting, a conservation commission shall adopt by a majority vote of those present and voting such rules as it deems necessary and appropriate for the performance of its functions. It shall annually elect a chair, a treasurer, and a clerk. Times and places of the meetings of Conservation Commission shall be publicly posted in the municipality, and its meetings shall be open to the public. A Conservation Commission shall keep a record of its transactions, which shall be filed with the town clerk as a public record of the municipality. And this is just the membership and appointment terms, 24 VSA 4502. A Conservation Commission shall not have less than 3 nor more than 9 members. All members shall serve without compensation, but may be reimbursed by the municipality for necessary and reasonable expenses. All members shall be residents of the municipality. The members of the Conservation Commission shall be appointed and any vacancy filled by the legislative body of the municipality. The term of each member shall be 4 years, except for those first appointed, whose term shall be varied in length so that in the future, the number whose terms expire in such successive years shall be minimized. And then just the removals and vacancies part is the 24 VSA 4503. Any member of a Conservation Commission may be removed at any time for a just cause by vote of the legislative body for reasons given to him or her in writing and after a public hearing thereon if he or she so requests. Any appointments to fill a vacancy shall be for the unexpired term. That is all I have for the statutes. I know that was a lot. Thank you for your patience.
But on what Bob was saying prior to you reading that, with that Borat grant, we had some ideas for it, so we could utilize those as some primary goals. Mm-hmm. And set forth with those goals to the commission, and then they can start that way you have a starting point where you're to look, it's not a willy-nilly deal. You just, and then you work within these guidelines of the statute. Obviously, if there's innovation, if we're going through an area and you recognize that there's, what do you call it? Not an invasive species, but something that's right, that we have to take and address it, and you bring it to our attention, whatever the board would. And then also I like it because it's incorporating the other commissions. The librarian has already worked with our parks to take and do educational stuff. So we can piggyback with that, Parks and Rec. They're excited about some of that stuff too, as far as the trails and uses, so.
Anybody else have anything? I have a bunch of stuff.
I can go on, but, I mean.
No, that's fine. I've been going on, yeah. It's, you
I'll
know.
just,
We got
Bob, you have anything?
just, I think, we're going through the 11 items that they can do. I think we need to be clear about what it is we want them to do. We want the commission for, and I think a lot of that, Tara, you have, right? Because you wanted this commission for specific reasons. And the one reason I heard the most is the administration of the new land, of the newly acquired land. But if we could articulate that on the website, and I would say, I would think that we would want to put a date certain for letters of interest. And maybe it's a couple of days before our 30th meeting when we get back together in a regular meeting, give people some time to digest it, but also get something on the website that talks about our specific goals. And maybe that's what we iron out in this session right now, is what are our specific goals for this Conservation Commission. Other things to look at is, are we creating a permanent arm of Pownell government? I mean, is this something that's going to exist in our Pownell government forever? Or is this something that we have goals for, and then once the goals are achieved, we can then disband? I mean, are the, that kind of thing. Are we really putting in a whole arm of government that will last in perpetuity in the town of Pownell government that isn't already covered by Parks and Rec, by Planning Commission, by DRB, and by the Select Board?
I think there's a little bit more to the conservation versus the other. I mean, the Select Board's obviously the governing body. But as far as some of the logistics for the land use and to work with outside agencies, if we were all retired on this board, then we'd have more time to take and assist and do that. But to my knowledge, most of us all have full-time jobs and work a lot of overtime
Well,
besides.
that's true, and that's why it's
And
important.
that's why
to
you have
define-
these commissions. You have these sub-commissions to the board.
Right, and that's why it's important to define whether, what exactly are we trying to achieve? Is it a short-term goal that here's the task, we do the task and we're done? Or is it something that lives in perpetuity? And that's,
Oh, I believe it's something that's gonna be long-standing myself.
Well, here's my take on it, and I'm gonna start right out on the powers and duties of the Conservation Commission. Okay, that's the very first, it's the, very first thing, right? Do we have an inventory of the continuing studies of the natural resources of our municipality, including air, surface, and groundwater and pollution? Do we have an inventory of the soils and their capabilities? Do we have mineral and other resources, an inventory of those? How about the streams, lakes, ponds, wetlands, and floodplains? Right? Do we have a unique or fragile biological site inventory? Do we have a scenic and recreational resources inventory? Right? Do we have plant and animal life, especially the rare and endangered species?
That's gross.
I know where you're going,
Thank you.
right? Prime agricultural and forest lands and other open lands. I've been here for 59 years, be 60 years in June, on my birthday. We've never had that. We've never had that.
we've
Now-
had some of that. Some of that was done
A
in
little bit.
preparation for the town plan, and a lot of that work was done by the BCR, or some of that work was done by the BCRC in helping us with the existing town plan. Some of it, not all of it.
Right.
But now, what I don't want to get caught up in is going down the 11 things that it could do and saying, let's do that. I mean,
I'm not saying that, Bob. That's not where I'm going at all. Because I do think that as far as the grants and receiving the gifts of land and that kind of stuff, I believe the Conservation Commission is, in my opinion, would be fine in someone approaching the Conservation Commission and say, hey, I got these 30 acres that are whatever, here it is, but then it comes down to a select board decision, right? I don't think there's any one of us that wants to be that person. Because as Jamie said, we all have jobs where someone comes to us and says,
And you
right?
might not have the knowledge of the effects on the grand scheme of things. For example, the purchase of the corner Center Street.
Exactly.
Exactly, I was just thinking
The
of
select board
that.
members don't necessarily know if that's a good choice or not to make. And that would be great to have input from people that really understand what it is.
Right. Exactly.
And I know that we're not supposed to be talking about the, letter of interest, but quite a few of those people have a lot of knowledge,
A lot of knowledge.
a lot of knowledge.
Well, but to Bob's point on the letter of interest,
Right, we're not discussing that.
but no, but that's fine, we can discuss it because he brought it up and we're still discussing that. I don't want to discuss the individual one.
Right.
Okay? But I do want to discuss the letter of interest portion of it because I do believe that we should set a date. Okay, letter of interest by whatever, right? We can come up with whatever date we want. And that's totally fine. And I totally agree with that. And I totally agree with, we should come up with a definition of what we feel that the Conservation Commission should be doing. Because it's gonna make it,
What's their
and
mission?
correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, it's gonna make that Conservation Commission a much more successful, potentially make it a much more successful commission if you have guidance of what the select board or what the legislative body is looking for the Conservation Commission to do.
That's absolutely true. The one thing I would caution you about is that, I'm a perfect example. I understand some of the letters, the people sound like they really, Angie was saying they have very, very good, professional kind of knowledge.
Couple master's degrees.
Yeah. But I think you also want, I mean, you want to be able to include, say, young people.
You want a diversity of people.
People who are interested in environment, environmental studies, stuff like that. And just, local volunteers who love the land.
So I think that what we need to do is, there again, I'm gonna put this onto the board. I think we need to come up with our vision of what the Conservation Commission, whatever we wanna call it.
A mission statement type thing?
Exactly, what we expect from the Conservation Commission. I know, and I'm gonna bring this up right now. From my standpoint, we have an incredible Parks and Rec department in town right now. I think we should have that in there, that the Conservation Commission work hand in hand
Yes.
with our Parks and Rec. Because it's, to me, this makes those a potential substantially large project, more hands you have working on it, the easier it's gonna be for everybody that, we can, Joe's in charge of trail systems and Helen's in charge of, the groundwater and I'm being crazy here, but it makes it I think it would make it way easier for a substantially large project.
Teamwork, I think they could.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe let's get some input from them as well, because there's also the risk of stepping on toes. We don't want redundancy in our boards, commissions, committees, right? So we already have a recreation. I think here we're looking more for it's a conservation commission. It's not a recreation, but they only come together when, say, recreation is impacting conservation or conservation is impacting recreation. So there is some crossover, but we want to make sure that there's clear lines.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see us stepping on toes, but, so for the town forest land, we want to encourage recreation, but it's also conserve land. So both you know, both aspects of that have to be taken into account, and, just how that's all gonna work. They definitely, I think, would have to work together. But I can definitely reach out to Jennifer for her,
And I know A&R and.
for their opinion.
Oh,
Well, you have to work with A&R when you have a major project anyway.
yeah,
right?
but
It's simple.
they really like to get involved with us, especially if you're talking and all that stuff. And there's grant money through them also to take
The
it,
regional-
help.
The District Conservation Commission.
Yep.
And I appreciate Megan's comment about making sure that you've got young, old, and everybody represented, because that's going to be very important. I don't
It
want it
is.
to come down to whoever has the biggest degree gets on the commission, because that doesn't necessarily give you what you want. You know, you need people who have lived in Pownell their whole lives, for example, people who live in the woods, people who you know, people who hunt, who
But on the other hand,
use our natural resources on a regular basis and understand it and understand them.
well, and I agree totally with that, Bob. You know that, and I really do. But I'm also of the mindset that you need a diverse group of people. So maybe, yes, there's not a whole bunch of land in the town of Pownell that my 2 feet haven't sat on, okay, at one point or another. I can tell you that right now. But maybe somebody from Colorado who's lived here for 5 years, has seen something that worked incredibly well out there where they're from. And because, man, my mind being here my whole life and being here, I don't see their side of it. So I see, you see where I'm going with that?
I do, and I agree with that. That's why it's multiple perspectives.
Right.
So if we just went down the list and said, you've got the best credentials from a degree standpoint, you would be shutting people out that may have that diverse background.
But if you went down the same list and said, well, you guys have all lived, these 7 people have lived in Pownell their whole entire lives, then we're potentially shutting out some really.
Right, exactly. So you don't want to do either. You
Right.
want to make sure that you got that cross section, and
That's
that
right.
and we can learn from others, but we also the Pownell culture is respected in everything that we do, because we do have a pretty unique culture, I think, of the Southern Vermont culture.
It's incredible.
We want to make sure that gets represented very well as well.
So I think we as a board need to come up with our vision for the Conservation Commission and come back and
So if we're setting a date, I think it should be probably, well, I think if we're going to come back, we're pushing the date out a bit far, but I think the first step is for us to define what we want out of this commission.
right.
Then the next step is to communicate, at the same time that we communicate that out to the town, we put a date certain for letters of interest. So there are a couple of steps here. I don't want to drag our feet, but we also can't skip steps. So then we would put out a date certain as to when we're going to stop taking letters of interest. And then I think we've been fair. We've given everybody a good idea of what it is we're trying to accomplish. And we've given them a date certain as to when they need to get their interest in.
So as a board, we have a meeting scheduled for November 30th.
Yeah.
Do we feel as a board that we can put together each person here with taking the holiday into consideration? And we've already, the work on the town office policy, right? Okay, do you feel that you could get a mission statement or whatever you want to call it for a conservation commission done for the 30th? Well, how does the rest of the board feel? I think it would be, I'd love to be able to say that I can do it, I'm not sure I can because I'm gonna be gone Thanksgiving, the Wednesday before, and not be back until the 27th, and I'm not gonna be focused on town business. I'm gonna be in Kentucky, and it's not gonna be focusing on town business. You want me to tell a story, or you want me to tell the truth?
Saturday's a wood day.
So, and I don't wanna, I'm with you, Bob, I don't wanna drag this out either. I wanna move it forward, but I also don't wanna try to slam the community town office policy and that, and the Conservation Commission. I don't want, because I'm afraid one or the other will get shortchanged, and I don't want to shortchange either one.
I know this is and that's a good point. And I know this is getting into December, but I think we have to do it right. So if we say the next regular meeting after,
14th.
after that would be that would be the date that we've solidified our vision for the Conservation Commission. And from there, we can say probably a day or two prior to our next regular meeting would be the cutoff for the letters of interest.
So our next regular scheduled meeting in December, I think, is the 14th. It's the second Thursday. And I think that would be a fair assessment. And unfortunately, if they were reversed on the agenda, it would probably go the other way.
Well, I just want to give you a friendly reminder.
The budgets, I know.
We are in budget season.
I know that.
We might have to meet every week just to get it all done.
But I kind of want, if we have to have my feeling is if we have to have special meetings other than our regularly scheduled meetings, I want those to be for budget.
Budget and then, okay. So
And then-
that's on the 14th.
And I know exactly what you were thinking. I knew that before you even brought it up.
Well, we generally have a couple of work sessions.
Right, but if we have to have special meetings, I would love to have those just for budget.
Okay.
So that they're not drawn out.
Yeah.
Where our regular meeting would be for something like this.
Okay.
So if we schedule the Conservation Commission mission statement or whatever we're
Yep.
calling it for the 14th. And then do we send ask for the letters after that? Because it's hard to ask for a letter before because we don't.
Well, we can keep it, I mean, it's already on our website and we can just leave it there. So if anybody wanted to submit a letter just because they're generally interested, they can still do so. But then from there, I think then we beef up what we've got on the site with the panel select board vision for the Conservation Commission. And from there, set the date certain. And the date certain would be, in my view, 1 or no more than 2 days prior to our next regular meeting. To give people enough time to read it.
Right, so our meeting would be the next one after the 14th would be the 28th. So we would ask for something hypothetically.
The 26th or 27th.
Okay, all right. And that also wouldn't give someone, that would also give someone who has already sent in a letter of interest a chance to pull their letter if they don't agree with what the legislative body, what the select board has put down as a mission statement. Not that that's gonna happen, I'm just saying it could, right? That they could pull their letter, because we already have some letters of interest.
Or
They would have that, or they could also exactly solidify their position based on what they could resubmit, I guess is what I'm saying, a letter of interest based on what we come up with as a mission statement, because maybe somebody really has a background in one of the things we put down there.
Or a large interest.
That's right.
And I would not expect anybody who's already put in a letter of interest to have to put in another one. We've already got it and we'll consider it. And then if they want to repeal it or retract it, everybody's capable of doing that at any time.
Right.
But yeah, so we would definitely consider all of those and then see if we've got any more interest. And we might not. We might be waiting this long to do the same 5 people, but we don't know.
Well, but I think the mission statement is, and what we expect of it is the most important thing to get out there. And then go from there.
That's a good discussion. I'm glad you hashed it out.
Thank you. No, and I apologize about you coming here just because of your letter of interest,
I
but
kind of feel it's like a potato in it.
Thanks for coming, Megan.
Doesn't that mean that we don't give the planning commission enough work?
why did this just pop up here?
Pops up on that cloud, so if you hit that cloud, it'll go away.
I don't need the internet. Okay, I think we're done with that. Anybody have anything else on that?
Was there anything else that you had to add?
How about public comment? Any public comment, Hannah?
We did public comment now so that people wouldn't have to wait till
That's right.
the meeting after.
There won't be any public comment after the executive, so if you have something, now is the time. Change the order a little bit.
So far, no hands up.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard to wait till, so.
Yep, I'll entertain a motion to enter into executive session for personnel.
So moved, second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Angie, I.
Bye-bye.
Jamie, I.
Mike, aye.
I didn't think,
All set? I'll entertain a motion to come out of executive for personnel.
so moved,
Second,
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Angie, I.
Bye-bye.
Jamie, I.
Mike, aye. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Angie, I.
Bye-bye.
Jamie, I.
Mike, aye. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.